Up with the latest San Francisco 49ers action in free agency. It's getting into draft season, hard pre-draft mode with John Lynch going around, scouts going around to different pro days, some signings. Austin Bryant, the latest for the 49ers. Could there be a big move still in the cards for San Francisco on the free agent or trade markets? All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you subscribe up, hit the thumbs up, the bell, and all of those things. If you're watching us live on this Thursday evening on YouTube, and hello to those of you, we love you just as much. If you're listening to us Friday on your way to work on all the audio pods, you can find us everywhere you find your podcasts. The latest news with the San Francisco 49ers, Croc, and I want to talk about Jimmie Ward's farewell message to 49ers fans, to the organization here in a little bit, but still some work to be done with this roster, even though the 49ers are out at pro days and getting ready for the NFL draft, which is a month away now, and a little over a month away. Austin Bryant, the latest signing, and it kind of happened and came down and was announced as we were live recording yesterday. We didn't really get into it too deep, but what do you think about the Austin Bryant signing, bringing old Clemson teammates, Clelin Ferrell and Austin Bryant together on the San Francisco 49ers roster, fellow 2019 draftees?
I think we talked about the 49ers and their ability to really just kind of go out there and find guys that can contribute, right? Like just fit a very specific role. And I think everybody just looks at Chris Kaczmarek, the defensive line coach, and they're like, man, he's the guy, like he's the master behind all this. But I think they are just whoever it is that says, hey, this guy's gonna fit in this very specific role and do well. They do a great job of that. So if it's Chris Kaczmarek, amazing job getting guys that are really good depth pieces.
Shout out to JT O'Sullivan in the chat, I believe, the QB School. If you guys aren't subscribed up to the QB School YouTube channel, and I know most of you, and if not all of you are, shame on you.
Yeah, like who's not subscribed to the QB School?
I mean, that's auto subscribe right there. Some of the best stuff, and really some great content with this quarterback.
You know why I like the QB School? Let's talk about why I like it so much. First of all,
let's talk about that.
JT O'Sullivan is very no nonsense, and it's like straight to the point. This is not I'm trying to create a narrative because, on social media, on Twitter, people, they find somebody's best throw and it's like, he can throw far. It's like, dude, we know that. We know this guy can throw far, but what goes into the play? And he really does a great job of breaking down the plays, the concepts. I learn a lot from it. I'm pretty sure everybody that follows him does as well. So great show if you're not already subscribed to that channel. Absolutely.
Appreciate the work that JT O'Sullivan puts in there. He's got a Patreon community as well, and just some great stuff. And I always learn a lot, and I like listening to people where I learn a lot when they're talking about different things. And that's why, Croc, I wanted to bring you on this podcast full time as my co-host, because I love hearing you talk about the game. You've played it, especially when you're breaking down DBs. And sometimes there's something I see with the guy and you see it differently, and you see what the coverage was and why something was busted during a game. And, maybe it wasn't the corner's fault after all. Maybe it was that safety's fault, so I love those things.
It comes off as I'm making excuses for guys, though. That's what I hear a lot. It's like, Croc, he's going to defend the DBs. And it's like, it's not that simple. It's not as simple as just this happened and then, it's just all on this guy. Like, you truly have to understand the coverages that they're running, whose responsibility is what. The game plan can change from game to game. So 1 week, this could have been his responsibility. Then the next week, they go into their meetings and they make an adjustment based on their opponent. Somebody can have a totally different responsibility in the same coverage. And those are things that it's hard to truly know that. But I try to break it down to the best of my ability in the sense of what it looks like to me. And sometimes it comes off as if I'm defending guys.
You just got to call it as you see it, man. You just got to be honest, Croc. And that's what it's all about. And that's what this podcast is all about. Telling it to the 49ers fans as honestly as we can. Analyzing what's going on, including what's happening right now in the offseason. Austin Bryant, the latest. I saw of Austin photos from podcasts and things like that, and I want to see an old photo with Clelin Ferrell and Austin Bryant together. And there's a photo of them at Clemson, And Cleveland Farrell's a pretty big guy. Austin Bryant looked really big and a lot bigger coming out of Clemson. He actually weighed in at 271, just a hair under 6'4", coming out of the draft. Bigger than I remembered, and bigger than he looked in a Lions uniform. Looked a little bit more svelte, a little bit more of a speed rushery type of a guy. A lot of legs and a lot of arms when you see him play.
You think it's the number though? You think it's the number? I mean, when you wear number 2,
yeah,
naturally going to look a little slimmer than if he would have had on 93.
That is slimming. The single digit will slim you down quite a bit. I think the only digit that didn't slim anybody down was who was the edge player that went from the Chargers to the Steelers?
Ingram,
and he was one of the first guys to wear.
Ingram?
Who was it?
Melvin Ingram.
Yes, Ingram. Yeah, and he's wearing like number 6. He's like, there's too much space between your body and where the number is. There's like a huge gap on both sides of the number. It's like it didn't work that well, but for Austin Bryant it did. Maybe that was why he looked a little slim, but I like it. People are posting some highlight moves of him. He wasn't super productive though with the Detroit Lions, but look, Chris Kocurek has gotten the most out of guys like that on the 49ers defensive line, and so I'm excited for it. Those are both bargain signings, 1-year deal for Farrell and Austin Bryant. I don't think it changes necessarily what they would do in the draft, but they're just kind of checking the boxes on their roster, making sure they have the right amount of people at the right amount of positions. And it's not even a guarantee that someone like Austin Bryant makes the roster for the 49ers, but it does make them feel better going into the draft, knowing that they don't have to reach for need and knowing that they can draft the best players that they see in every round and then let the guys fight it out during training camp. And we'll see where this roster ends up. And Croc, I know a lot of people have asked us if there's any more big moves, and that the 49ers might go Clowney, who's out there in free agency, or Justin Houston. Even I've seen the names, and maybe later in the summer. I just don't think the 49ers have a lot of money right now to spend, and I think we're seeing these bargain signings in free agency that they're bringing in a lot of 1-year guys. I think that's what we can expect, especially before the draft comes. And I'd be really surprised. And in fact, looking at the salary cap numbers that were dropped today by Field Yates, the 49ers are bottom 5 in the NFL with only $3 million of cap space, and they need most of that to sign their rookies anyway. So I wonder if the 49ers, and look, they could do some things. They could restructure Christian McCaffrey's deal. When they do a deal in the summer with Nick Bosa, that could bring down his 5th-year option number that he's going with this year coming into the season. So, they could create some space if they want to do something big. But right now, at least before the draft, I think I'd be a little surprised if anything big happens.
Do the 49ers want to restructure Christian McCaffrey's deal? Because right now, McCaffrey doesn't have any guaranteed money. So you restructure it, you're going to be making it to where, don't you kind of like handicap yourself a little bit if indeed you kind of want to move on? Now, again, I just talked about yesterday how he was kind of the missing piece in the offense and started to open things up for Kyle Shanahan and some of these quarterbacks. But do you want to restructure it to where it guarantees that you have to keep them at, $12 million plus dollars per year over the next couple of years?
Yeah, it's a good question when it comes to running backs. And he's going to count $12 million against the cap this year, and he's going to count $12 million against the cap again next year. And it's a lot of money to pay a running back. It's top of the market running back money, but it's not guaranteed. So if they do restructure, they could bring that number down this year, but then the years where maybe Christian McCaffrey as a running back, and it just happens, and hopefully it doesn't happen soon for Christian McCaffrey. But if you start to wear down, maybe they don't want all that guaranteed money in future years that they could lose potentially if some injury concerns start to pop up with Christian McCaffrey. So if they can get through this, and they've already got, they made the big swing with Hargrave in free agency, they've already got that under the cap. I think it'd be smart for the 49ers not to do more restructures than they need to if they feel good about the roster. But we'll see what happens in the summer. If they want to create a little bit of space and add some more players, then they have the opportunity to be able to do that as well.
And I think that's what a lot of people thought would happen last year with Jimmy Garoppolo, where it's like, aren't you going to restructure his deal? And they're like, no, we ain't touching that thing. We want to be able to really get rid of him. So whatever it was with the restructuring of this contract, they kept it as is until it was time to be like, all right, we're either going to cut you or you could take this pay cut. But at the start of free agency, when a lot of people thought that they would be able to kind of restructure his contract, things like that, they didn't touch it.
An interesting note really quick from John Lynch, who I believe, I think it's Matt Barrows, a reporter caught up to him at Stanford's Pro Day and was asking him about Oliver. And we had questioned because we hadn't gotten any any numbers about what the contract looked like for Isaiah Oliver. I was like, was that deal actually going to happen? It looks like it's going to happen. We don't know what the numbers are yet, but John Lynch was open enough to talk about it, and he mentioned how they liked him pre-draft, and he could have been the pick except for if it wasn't for the 49ers deciding to go with Dante Pettis in 2018 in the second round. So and that he's pretty much locked into the slot. That's where they like him. That's where he played his best ball. And Steve Wilkes played against him twice, being in the same division with the Carolina Panthers against the Atlanta Falcons, and knew him well and liked him. So that's why they brought him in. And it looks like with the free agent signing of Isaiah Oliver and probably second year guy Sam Womack battling out for that nickel role. And those are two very different guys, very different size wise, and just an interesting player that Isaiah Oliver has become. Sort of everyone thought he was an outside corner, myself included, you included. John Lynch talked about, he thought the same thing. And so it was really cool to hear John Lynch talk about that. And Isaiah Oliver, the player he became, kind of surprised everybody. But now you got a sort of a big slot to match up with a lot of offensive big slots that are around the league now.
Yeah, I wonder, based on this contract, if it is indeed like an open competition between him and Samuel Womack. Because Womack was a guy, he actually started the year at nickel. Like, he was a starter. And then, what was it, 2 games in, maybe 3 games in, by the time the 49ers played against the Broncos, it wasn't him anymore. And I'm like, dang, I thought he was playing well. So I have to go back and really dive in and see exactly what was going on with him and kind of diagnose it to the best of my ability. But I thought the 49ers defense played extremely well early on, and I didn't see anything that said, hey, Samuel Womack is the issue. You got to remember, they played the first game against the Chicago Bears, and there were a couple of blown assignments, but it felt like it was more on the safeties, like the last contained guys. And then they played the Seahawks. They didn't give up any points on defense. Seahawks scored a touchdown on a blocked field goal. And then you play against the Broncos, and obviously they, gave up 9 points. And then, Jimmy Garoppolo ran out the back of the end zone for another 2. But I didn't see anything that said, hey, man, this Samuel Womack, you got to get this guy off the field. Defense was playing well. So I wonder what it was. And we know, Kyle Shanahan, when it comes to these young guys, I feel like the leash it's short. It's like you got to come in, and whether it's Kyle and maybe DeMeco Ryans was on that same page as well, but it's like you got to come in and you have to play at the standard of everybody else, which obviously that defense is cooking. So maybe he just wasn't quite living up to it because Lenore was immediately in there in the slot.
All right, little state of the 49ers offseason now as we probably for the most part start looking really deep into the NFL draft, less so free agency at this portion of the offseason, and go through some of the signings and the statement from Jimmie Ward saying goodbye to San Francisco 49ers next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by our friends at Built Bar. It is tourney time. It is Built Bar tourney time as well. Built March Madness bracket is back. And we all know you have a favorite bar or puff. Now's the time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorites. I'll be voting for, I wish this just the regular old peanut butter bar, the classic peanut butter. It was my first love of the Built bars. It's still my favorite. You can't even find it right now at Built.com, but they do have the peanut butter brownie in the Built bracket, which I would be voting for. Croc's all about the puffs. What is your favorite? When you vote for your favorite bar or puff, you'll be entered into a drawing as well, where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. And not only that, one lucky Locked On listener will get a 12-month subscription to Built and have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to your door. You got to try Built. You love it. It's the best protein bar ever. It's unbelievable. 130 calories in most Built bars. Low sugar, low calories, but high in protein. 17 grams of protein in most Built bars. So go make your favorite known. BuiltMarchMadness.com and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March, so hop in and support your pick. Let's take a little look here at exactly just the scoreboard of the San Francisco 49ers offseason so far, Croc. We got, this is by dollars, by annual value per year. And the biggest deal that involves either a new or an ex-San Francisco 49er is Jimmy G, $24.25 million. He got a 3-year contract, over 24 per with the Las Vegas Raiders. Next biggest is $21 million average value on the 4-year contract for Javon Hargrave going from Philadelphia to the San Francisco 49ers, but that could turn out to be a 2-year, $40 or so million contract. The way that one is structured, if the 49ers need to move on from Javon Hargrave halfway through that contract due to, other salary cap stuff and other players that they've got to pay and giving themselves the best now with some options in the future with the way some of these contracts are structured for the 49ers. Mike McGlinchey leaves the 49ers, goes to the Denver Broncos on a 5-year, $17.5 million per year salary. Samson Ebukam to the Indianapolis Colts on a 3-year, $8 million per contract. Charles Omenihu gets the $8 million per for 2 years with the Kansas City Chiefs. Jimmie Ward leaves San Francisco for DeMeco Ryans' Houston Texans, 2 years, $6.5 million per season. Emmanuel Mosley, 1-year contract at $6 million with the Detroit Lions. Azeez Al-Shaair, 1 year, $5 million with the Tennessee Titans. I don't know how Azeez Al-Shaair didn't get a long-term contract, but only the 1-year deal there for Al-Shaair with the Tennessee Titans. Niners bring in backup quarterback Sam Darnold, 1 year, $4.5 million. Jake Brendel back, $4.1 million per year on a 4-year contract to be the starting center. Hassan Ridgeway goes to Houston as well, 1 year, $3.25 million. Daniel Brunskill, 2 years, $2.75 million per with the Tennessee Titans. So the Titans and the Houston Texans stealing multiple San Francisco 49ers. And then the Niners bring in some bargain level players. Cleveland Farrell, 1 year, $2.5 million. The Austin Bryant, don't know exactly what the numbers are there, but it's a 1-year contract. They did bring back Demetrius Flanagan-Foles after not tendering him a restricted free agent contract, 1.8 million contract. And T.Y. McGill is 1 year, 1.65 and 1.1 million for Tarvarius Moore, who leaves the 49ers with the Green Bay Packers. And then we still don't know what the number is for Isaiah Oliver either. But John Feliciano, by the way, also signing with the San Francisco 49ers, the center from the New York Giants, versatile interior offensive lineman. So that is the scorecard right now. Croc, more guys leaving than entering the picture for the 49ers. But man, with the Hargrave move, I really feel like the 49ers got better. Am I way off thinking that?
No, I think so. I mean, I think the thing that just hurts me, and we're going to talk about kind of Jimmie Ward and his farewell, was just kind of what he meant to the team from an emotional standpoint, X's and O's. He talks about it like, man, there ain't nobody in the league that watches more film than him. So once he bought into being that nickel guy and kind of moving from safety to nickel, how much he meant, I feel like, to the defense and how much he, stepped his game up. So, Hargraves, I mean, I feel like it's a net positive. But losing Jimmie Ward, I think just because of the versatility, I mean, he's your starting safety. He gets hurt, he gets basically replaced, then he goes and plays another position and then ultimately excels there as well. Like you don't find a lot of guys that are able to do that.
Depth did take a hit. They've got 11 draft picks to try to replenish some of that depth. They're worse on the offensive line right now, losing Mike McGlinchey. The offensive line, but depth is an issue in the defensive secondary.
Real quick, like to trade away your number 1 pick for Trey Lance, and then your second, third, and fourth round picks for Christian McCaffrey, and still have 11 picks, it's kind of wild.
Yeah, those 3 comp picks in the third round. I think it was 7 overall compensatory selections the 49ers got this year. And they're going to get some more next year too, because that Jimmy G contract, that wipes out the Javon Hargrave deal. And then with McGlinchey signing that big money contract, and then some of the other big defensive end dollars that those contracts were, the 49ers are going to be positive again, even if they don't lose any more coaches or anything like that.
And DeMeco Ryans. I mean, because isn't it? It's like you get one this year, then like one the next year.
There's still one more. It's like the combo of DeMeco and Rand Carthon. They still have one more. So they'll get a third next year for that, and probably a third for losing Mike McGlinchey as well. Wow. So more comp picks to come for the San Francisco 49ers. Definitely playing the comp game, and they're going to have to continue to be good with those mid-round picks, because that's all they got this year, and need to hit on some guys to replenish that depth.
And you also next year get first-round pick, second-round pick. So you start to get those back on top of having 3 and third-round picks probably.
It'll be the first time they draft in the top 60 for 3 years. Yeah. Pretty wild. Jimmie Ward. Here's Jimmie Ward. I'm not going to read the whole statement. It's a super long statement, but pretty heartfelt message that Jimmie Ward sat down and wrote to San Francisco 49ers fans and the organization. He said, "I find it difficult to express the depth of gratitude and appreciation that I feel for the nine amazing years that I spent playing for this organization. Being part of the 49ers has been one of the greatest experiences of my life, and it is with a heavy heart that I now say goodbye." And he went on to thank everybody for everything. And it was a really cool message from Jimmie Ward. And man, 9 years, that's a long time to spend with one organization. And I don't know if Jimmie Ward necessarily goes down with the all-time greats, but he was around for some good teams, and he was around for a really long time, and was a really versatile piece, and started outside, started early in his career, started in the nickel late in his career, and started at safety in between. And was just a really good 49er. So it was a cool message from Jimmie Ward.
I think he actually started as a nickel. And I think, first of all, before we get into the game against Brandon Marshall when he was guarding him in the slot and gave up 3 touchdowns, the swag from Jimmie Ward was atrocious. I mean, with his rookie year, he had these huge shoulder pads. The sock game was trash. The cleat game was trash. The shoulder pads huge. And then he had like this Pop Warner face mask. And I actually hit up one of his teammates, Tremaine Brock. I said, "Brock, can somebody help Jimmie Ward out? Dude looks like a Pop Warner player out there." And he's like, "Man, that's just how he goes out there." And he was physical. He was aggressive, all those things. Over the years, he got a lot better. Now he's one of the cleanest guys on the defense or was. But played multiple positions, obviously. Never truly got to settle in at one position until he kind of for maybe 2 years. Remember, he went through a ton of different defensive coordinators. It almost felt like everybody felt like they had like a different role for him. And he was able to kind of prosper throughout all of that. And not just that, going through that adversity, but the injuries. And there were a lot of 49er fans that felt like Jimmie Ward was a bad football player. And when they were re-signing him, they're like, "Why are you re-signing him? He's bad." Like, no, he's not bad. He just has had bad injury luck. And once he was able to string together some seasons where he was fairly healthy throughout the year, you got to see how good of a football player he was, to the point where people are talking about him as one of the top 3 safeties in the league, or definitely 3 through 5. So I thought he did a lot. I know he didn't have the high interception numbers and turnover numbers, so I see the things float out about Gibson and Hufanga combined for more turnovers than Ward and Tart in their whole career or something like that. But the value that he had and the things that he did, and third down is like, man, I could put him on a slot. I can run man. I can bring in a third safety, put him in the slot, and man him up in guys in dime situations. It probably really helped a defensive coordinator. I know that's something that I would really like. So that versatile piece, man, it wasn't flashy, but did his job, and liked to throw his body around too.
We do have some specifics here for the Isaiah Oliver contract. That is from the doc here and via overthecap.com. So Over the Cap does have the official numbers here for Isaiah Oliver's contract. It looks like $1.6 million this year, $3.76 million next year, and then 3 void years to keep those cap numbers down for Isaiah Oliver. So, and who is very likely going to be that replacement for Jimmie Ward in the slot, pending. I wouldn't mind just seeing it in camp a little bit, seeing it preseason, just see what Isaiah Oliver has at safety. If you're 6'1", 200 pounds, and you can play in the slot, I got to believe you can play safety, because the reason nickel guys are nickel because they're too small to be playing safety, right?
Two usually not fast enough to be a legit outside guy. So it's like you can be big but not that fast on the out, and still be able to play outside because you can guard the vertical pushing routes with your length. But if you're small and then not that fast, it's like you kind of got to play nickel. Yeah. That's why if you look at even other guys like Samuel Womack, right? We talk a lot about him playing in the nickel. We play a lot on the outside too for the 49ers at different times, because he has that long speed. So Isaiah Oliver is really kind of the opposite, because you got so much space that you have to cover, so much ground. When you are in the slot and facing twitched up guys, you guys remember the NFC Championship game, 49ers against the New York Giants? I'm pretty sure you do, the Kyle Williams game. All right, sorry guys, I had to bring it up. But what got overshadowed in that is how Victor Cruz was giving Carlos Rogers the blues. I mean, just killing them in that first half, because those guys that are really good in and out of their breaks, it's harder for some of these guys that are bigger cornerbacks, which Carlos Rogers was. I mean, he was a decent sized outside corner, big for a nickel. And you could see how sometimes those longer movement skills kind of hurt you a little bit when you play against guys that are really quick and twitched up in and out of their breaks.
Next, Croc, a storyline we haven't really talked about. Ben Roethlisberger saying that the 49ers gave him a ring last year after Jimmy G went down, and Phillip Rivers was part of this whole thing. And so I want to get into this next, and we'll get into the chat a little bit too. What do you guys think about the state of the 49ers right now as we sit here late March between free agency and the draft? Next, today's episode of Locked On 49ers is tournament heating up. Perfect time to download America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores to threes drained. Tons of prop bets for all the tournament games. Of course, NBA and NHL getting close to postseason ball, and the Major League Baseball season a week away from opening day. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a bigger chance at a payout with single game parlays. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Did you see the story about Ben Roethlisberger, Croc? I'm not so sure this one passed the smell test, except for that it's Ben Roethlisberger himself saying, as I wouldn't believe it. If I would not believe it if it was reported by what else? Somebody on the outside, or just a radio guy that had some connections or something. But Ben Roethlisberger said that the 49ers reached out and contacted him late last year when Jimmy Garoppolo went down. And we had talked about that a lot on the show. We're like, you got to call somebody, probably see if you can get our guy was Drew Brees. See if you can get Drew Brees out of retirement, right? Turns out the 49ers had Drew Brees sitting there right there on their roster. There was a report that Phillip Rivers actually called the 49ers. And so the 49ers said no to Phillip Rivers. And Ben Roethlisberger was like, I can't really envision myself coming back and playing in another uniform than the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he turned that down, and that's what he said. Now, I don't know if he remembers it differently, or if the 49ers just kind of called a lot of guys just to kind of see. But the reason it doesn't pass the smell test is for one reason, and that is because Ben Roethlisberger was absolutely cooked for the last 2 seasons. You could not have watched Ben Roethlisberger and thought this is a good idea to bring this guy in. Like, there had to be other players and other names you would have called. Like, if you just called everybody just to see, that would make sense. But if you only called Big Ben and you said no to Rivers, and you didn't call like Breeze, and you didn't call I don't know, whoever, Steve Young, Big Ben was cooked. So I'm not surprised the 49ers reached out and were like trying to figure out what they wanted to do with a veteran quarterback when all that went down. And how sad would it have been if we had not gotten the Brock Purdy experience last year?
Right, and the interesting part too was when Jimmy Garoppolo went down, Brock Purdy came in against the Dolphins and played well. So do you just say, you know what? Yeah, you played well, but I'm not sure you can do it again. And maybe that is, again, Kyle Shanahan, it wants to be certain. He doesn't like messing around with young guys. Like that's very clear. He doesn't want to deal with the roller coaster of it. So I could definitely see him saying, all right, Brock, you played well, but let me get a veteran in here. The veterans turned it down. Damn, I kind of got to go with Brock Purdy. Oh, man, Brock Purdy's actually pretty good. Let me just stay with this guy. All right, I'm good, But I could see him giving a guy, even like Ben Roethlisberger, who, shot. You talked about being shot. Whatever elbow injury he had, he couldn't drive the ball down the field. That Pittsburgh offense, they had a lot of vertically pushing routes. They throw the ball down the field. And he turned it into like this super Kyle Shanahan on steroids offense. And what I mean by steroids, not in a good way. I mean, it was check down Charlie to the point where Ray McCloud was averaging like 2 yards per reception, right? Like, I mean, it was all short. Everything was short. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to see that version of Ben Roethlisberger in a 49ers uniform, especially like one of our guys said, Ben Roethlisberger, not that one, here we go. been coming in with no camp and out of shape? Heck no. I would not want to see that.
It's some folks in the chat. If things are breaking up, I don't know what's going on, if it was the weather or what. We had a power outage yesterday, so who knows? Maybe there's some internet issues happening on my end. But so apologies for those. But yeah, it's just a weird story. And how crazy is it sometimes with the NFL and all the resources that teams, it's not just the 49ers with the Trey Lance trade up, and we don't know what Trey Lance is going to end up being, but just with the luck involved with finding a quarterback, if Mr. Irrelevant, the literal last pick in the draft, ends up being a long-term guy for the 49ers, with all the other stuff they tried to do and paying Jimmy Garoppolo what was at one point the biggest contract ever in the history of the NFL, right? They paid him at quarterback, and after trading for him and then trading up in the draft and all the arguments, and was it Mac Jones, and we liked Justin Fields, and then you end up with Trey Lance, and then it's this dude Brock Purdy out of Iowa State that ends up being the guy. And we've seen it multiple times. Like the Patriots, there was a lot of luck there with Tom Brady ending up being the guy. And you can look down the list at so many teams, and with all the resources and all the trying and all the effort to find quarterbacks and how hard it is, and some of the guys that end up being the guy, it's just pretty wild how some of this turns out in the NFL and how much one little move could completely change things for a franchise.
Yeah, I think fortunately for the 49ers, and they're in a great situation. I think, let's say it never works out with the 49ers and Trey Lance for whatever reason. Oh, well, like, you still got a quarterback. Like, you're good. So there are a lot of people, like, I have some buddies in my group chats, and they're like, oh, you guys drafted Trey Lance. Who cares? We went to 2 NFC championships in back-to-back years with Trey Lance on the roster after trading up for him. Like, we don't care. Maybe you can have some other sweet player. It doesn't matter. Obviously, the 49ers team is good enough regardless. So, I think that is probably the bigger storyline, or the more interesting part of it, where it's like, man, this quarterback is a bust or whatever, right? However it works out. Still with the back-to-back NFC championship games, and you're still like the second highest odds to win the Super Bowl next year. So, how big of a miss? I mean, it would be a miss on the player, but the situation wasn't screwed up, because usually that's the issue, right? You miss on a top 5 quarterback, you set your franchise back 5 years. I think that's what they say, right? You set it back 5 years, and 49ers are like, that doesn't pertain to us. Like, we're good over here.
Jedi says, nice to have you guys live. Appreciate it, man. Please appreciate everybody out there jumping in live with us here, or whether you're watching us later live. Really appreciate you guys making us your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. A lot more draft scouting to happen on Locked On 49ers. I've got a couple tight ends in the hopper. I think we're gonna have to do a couple tight end only episodes because of how many good tight ends are in this class, and it seems like everyone's got a favorite one that they're asking us about. So if you have a favorite prospect or a particular mock draft that you see that has some prospects in it that we haven't dove into yet, we're collecting a database of players here. So hit us up. Let us know at BD Peacock on Twitter, at Eric_Crocker. Drop it in the comments on YouTube as well. And was it? Oh,
Yeah, can I answer that?
Yeah, you can.
All right, so question here from 187. He says, Crocker, if a locker room says a QB has it, does that mean anything? You played, want your thoughts? Here are my thoughts, especially on the NFL. The players do not care. Like like the NFL is a business, and the players ultimately is like, man, I just want to win. So when let's say Trey Lance, the players in the locker room don't care about player development. They don't care that Trey Lance has a super high upside. Are we going to win? Ultimately, like, that's all they care about. So when you have a guy like Brock Purdy and he comes in and he just does some things where it's like, hey, we're cooking, right? Like, hey, we're good. Like, he has it. Like, it's not that it doesn't mean anything, but it just, at the end of the day, we can win with this quarterback. We're good. Let's go. Let's rock and roll. Yeah. Right? They want to make their money. They want to win. They want to go out there and handle business. And whoever they feel at that time has shown them the ability to do that. Because that's what it is. If Trey Lance goes out there and he wins a few games, then they'll be like, hey, Trey Lance, greatest quarterback ever. Right? He just hasn't truly had that, like, quite that type of opportunity, because he only started 4 games and hasn't finished back-to-back games. So, for them, I think that's the part when it comes to Brock Purdy and some of the things he probably picked up from Iowa State, being a starter for so many years, right? Like you just pick up these things that Trey Lance just never had the opportunity to pick up. And it's like, hey, yeah, this guy can come in here and he knows how to demand a huddle. Well, yeah, he's been the guy at Iowa State for 4 years. Trey Lance played 1 year at North Dakota State with a bunch of guys that have been there for probably 5-6 years. It's just so like totally different. I don't even think you can compare anything to Trey Lance's situation. He had to learn it and hasn't truly had that opportunity. So when you compare that to Brock Purdy, it's like Brock Purdy's situation is complete opposite. And he's just so prepared for what Kyle wants and with the weapons that they have. So I think that's what it is. Okay, he has it. But would they take him over any other top 5 quarterback? Like the answer is no. You know what I'm saying? But they know for what they need, it's like, hey, this is good enough. And he's able to do this as a rookie. So I think they really appreciate that. So I guess it means something in the sense of they want to win and they have seen him help them do that.
And I will say some pass catchers are wired in a way that they want the ball coming their direction. So whichever quarterback is going to get them the ball is the guy they like. And I think we just saw Elijah Moore get traded from the New York Jets because of how bad Zach Wilson was that did not have it and couldn't get him the ball. And
I've never seen anything like that. Like that's even.
And then got traded for very little, even though how talented he is. And by the way, 49ers fans know they couldn't have traded for with draft picks necessarily for Elijah Moore, because even if they packaged all 3 of their late first round or late third round picks in this draft, it wouldn't have been enough according to the trade chart for what Cleveland ended up giving them. Even though it was a swap of second and thirds, it was the value was still sort of a higher third round pick, and the Niners just didn't have the bullets trade wise to go get Elijah Moore. And I've seen a few people ask us about that.
That situation with Zach Wilson, I have not seen that, where guys are just like, they're burning the cheese hats over a bonfire, like praying to the gods that they get Aaron Rodgers, and you have Zach Wilson. Like they hate Zach Wilson. That's very clear.
Yeah.
So you don't see, at least you don't see that. Like when you talk about players not believing in a player or a teammate, they do not believe in Zach Wilson, like to the maximum. I have never seen anything like that. They said, oh, please, Aaron Rodgers, save us from Zach Wilson. They prayed over a bonfire.
That's amazing. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable what's happening over there, and they're bending over backwards to do everything for Aaron Rodgers. So we'll see if that deal ends up getting done. But man, at least the 49ers didn't have to go through that. Look, they've got their own thing with quarterback right now, but they didn't miss to the point where nobody wants this guy on their team as it pertains to Trey Lance. They just don't know, and he hasn't had the opportunity yet. So we'll see what it ends up looking like with Trey Lance. But at least he's got his head screwed on right, which is more than you can say about some quarterback prospects that are big misses in the NFL. All right, we got to get out of here. Thanks, everybody, for making us first listen. Croc and I back Monday right here, Locked On 49ers.